Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our global community. This is one of the most exciting webinars that we've given in a while because I really believe that in order to build a tribe around you, you need to tell great stories and get other people to tell those stories. And you do that by building community through content and conversation. And who better to share that with us than Heather Dopson. Heather, welcome.
Thank you so much, John. I'm excited to be here.
So Heather is a community builder at GoDaddy. She uses her abilities to build connections through conversations, and she has this mission in life to help people lose their job and find their joy. And I first met Heather through swimming in the social river, and I saw her unique style where she stood out as a trusted advisor to millions of small businesses. And so when we thought about building a webinar around influencers, we thought about, everybody talks about these big influencers. What about the micro influencers? And I think they're being forgot about. And so, Heather, why don't you take us away and rock and roll our world?
Sure. Thank you so much, John. I'm really excited to talk about this. I have mad, passionate love for small businesses and helping people really, truly leave the doldrums of a job that they hate and start a business or find their role inside a company. You can find joy in a job, also joy in employment. But I also have some agency experience as well, and I get to do some really cool things with relationship building and influencer marketing at GoDaddy.
And one of the things I'm sorry to interrupt, Heather, I forgot to say, please ask questions throughout the presentation. Michaela and I will be in the background filtering and answering questions. We'll take a summary of the questions that are applicable at large to the audience at the end, before the top of the hour, to answer Q&A at the end.
Yep, absolutely. Ask questions, ask away. So we're going to run through a variety of things today, but most importantly, we're going to define what influencer marketing is. We're going to break down some differences between types of influencer marketing, how to really identify who those people are. I'm going to walk through or explain some tools to you. We'll talk a little bit about metrics today and some mistakes. I can share some mistakes that I've made as well to help you avoid those. And then we've got a couple offers for you, and then we'll have Q&A at the end. But also be sure, if a question pops into your head, don't hesitate to ask it here in this question box. We've got John and Michaela back there, and I'm kind of watching too. So let's just dive right in. So let's really identify what influencer marketing means. This is not affiliate marketing, and this is not advocacy marketing. These are really different forms of marketing. And what influencer marketing does is it really places focus on people who have a community of followers and really building relationships with them instead of identifying the target market as a whole. And what I look for when I'm identifying influencers, I look for people who seek to make an impact, not just have influence. And I truly believe that there's a difference between impact and influence. When I'm working on stuff for GoDaddy specifically, I'm looking for people who have a similar vision to what our vision at the company is, and particularly that they have a vested interest in the success of their own community. It's not just a popularity contest. It is actual care and concern about their own community. So understand that influencer marketing and affiliate marketing are two separate forms. Now, you can have an influencer that is also an affiliate, but these are two different things. Let's talk about the difference between micro and macro. What a lot of people think of instantly when they think of influencer marketing, they think of big names. So they think of the Kardashians or pop stars or people who have 1 million followers on Instagram, things like that. those people, we consider those macro influencers, and we do work with macro influencers at GoDaddy. You may know that we work with Danica Patrick. We consider her a macro influencer because she has a large community. But micro influencers, we really are looking at people who have a direct and personal connection with their audience. And the cool thing about micro influencers is that they really have this following that tends to be really fiercely loyal. And I really enjoy working with micro influencers because they are typically eager to work with a brand as long as there is alignment between what that brand is doing and their community. And this is really important to me, and I want it to be important to you as well. One of the biggest mistakes that I see businesses of all sizes make is they develop relationships or strategies with influencers who don't really have an interest in their product or their service. They just have an interest in getting paid to promote it or paid to pimp it, is what I like to say. And I'm not a huge fan of this. And so when I'm looking at influencers or potential influencers, people that I want to identify, I'm looking at what they're already doing. If they're already doing some work where they're sharing products and services for other people, and I follow the conversations and I follow to see if they're an actual user of the product or the service, or if they are clearly they've just been paid to promote it. And John, you've seen this. I know that other people who are listening have seen this too, but John, you've seen this where you're scrolling through Instagram and you see someone promote something that very clearly they're not using or they're not really a fan of. They just happen to be getting paid, or there's some kind of value exchange for them to talk about it.
Well, Heather, that's absolutely right. And I think that social media has increased the transparency and increased the expectations that we have of each other. And that if somebody is out there sharing a product that is inauthentic, you feel it, you know it, and it really just defeats the purpose. In fact, you actually get negative pull from those kind of things. And there's a guy who does those Cadillac commercials, Michael, what's his name? Michael O'Donoghue or what? So there's an actor that does these.
Matthew McConaughey does Lincoln commercials.
Lincoln commercials, right? And so there's a lot of people who make jokes about the fact that he may have a Lincoln in his driveway, but he never drives it because he probably just gets paid for it. But honestly, I actually know people who know him, and he does drive it, and he's been driving it since he was a kid. Lincoln has been part of his family. So I think that you definitely need to make sure that it's authentic, and the people that you're bringing in to help you spread your gospel have already influence or talk about these particular subjects on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the jokes that I talk about often is supplements, like protein supplements or pre-workout supplements or all of these kinds of things. Like I joke that nobody is just posting about their supplement because they love their supplement so much. And I say, when I see that somebody has posted an Instagram picture about their supplement, they got that stuff for free. Because nobody really does it. I mean, and there's probably some exceptions, but I'm just a big proponent of being authentic. And you're right about the transparency. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the reasons that you really want to use micro influencers. So number one is that they're more affordable. And this applies regardless of the size of the brand, but especially if you're a small business. Clearly, you don't have the budget to have someone like Shaquille O'Neal or Kim Kardashian or whoever to promote your product. The best you can hope for, if you have some type of, I always think of like a t-shirt company or a jewelry company, and somebody of that type of status happens to wear your stuff and happens to have a picture taken in it, but that's not really an influencer strategy. That's just kind of luck. So for micro influencers, they're definitely more affordable. And the cool thing about a lot of people at this level is that it's not always necessarily an exchange of money that has to happen. Oftentimes, if they are a fan of your product or your service already, they may be talking about you out there already, then there is some exchange of value that is other than just dollars. But typically, if you're going to pay, we'll say for Instagram, if you're going to pay for a post on Instagram from a micro influencer, you can often do something for as low as $100 or $250, depending on the number of followers that they have, which is far more affordable than a lot of these big names are charging. I mean, I don't even know what Kim Kardashian charges. I could find out, but I'm not interested in having Kim promote our stuff, right? I just don't think it would be authentic, and it doesn't fit in my budget either. So next is the relatability. Now, this is really important because, as you guys know, Facebook, the algorithm that Facebook operates on serving up content that the users really are interested in. So most of last year, there were a lot of surveys and polls that Facebook was doing that were asking questions about, does this interest you? Do you care about this? And a lot of people responded to that. Then earlier this year in January, Mark Zuckerberg committed to, we want Facebook to be a place of community, and we want this to be a place that's serving up content that you really care about. This is the same for Instagram, and most social platforms are going to go this direction. So Instagram changed its timeline to a very similar algorithm to Facebook late last year. And it relies on, this is really important for you guys to understand, that the algorithms for Facebook and Instagram rely on machine learning technology. And what that's doing is it's picking up a mix of signals, so actions on your part, to determine the order of photos and videos in your feed. And it includes what is the likelihood that the user will be interested in this particular content, the timeliness of the post, and what is the relationship between the two users. So if you think about it, most of us are on social media, like normal, regular people are on social media because they're interested in what their friends or families are doing. Some of us follow brands because we're interested in what those brands are doing, brands of all sizes. But we have to remember that who we're looking for from a micro-influencer standpoint is that we want people who are relatable and who have relationships with their followers. So they're actually engaging with their followers. They're not just posting a picture or a video and then never going back and interacting with the comments or questions or anything on there. And that's a really important distinction that I want you guys to understand. Additionally, micro-influencers are typically easier to engage. So Mark Casey, I see that you've asked a question here that I'm going to get to, I promise. But your micro-influencers are people who are already out there who are engaging with their audience. If we're looking at people who are relatable and people who are having conversations with their followers, they're much easier to engage. And as I mentioned earlier, they're typically much more excited to work with brands of all sizes, especially if your product or your service is relevant to them, or more importantly, relevant to their community. A lot of these people who have worked to build a community are really focused on making sure that they're bringing value to their community. Wouldn't you say that's right, John? Of like, if you have a really powerful person, and I'm not talking about number of followers, but someone who really wants to make an impact, they care about the products and services that they're bringing to their community. It's not just what they're getting paid to promote.
Yeah, I think for our audience, I think you just have to forget about payment, right? Because most small businesses can't even afford $100
Yep.
for an influencer to post, or nor would they want to pay it. And in fact, I'll argue that posts that you pay for are less valuable than posts that are done are more organically. And I'll give you a strategy that I actually see happening in my neighborhood, because I post on a regular basis on a variety of channels on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. In fact, if you want to know more about John Ferrara, just Google me, JONFERRARA, and you'll see my Instagram feed. Check it out. And what you'll see is I share typically on the 5 F's of life: family, friend, food, fun, and fellowship. And what happens is that people comment and like my stuff that I've never even known. And many times it's businesses in the local area. So imagine this: I'm a restaurant and somebody posts at another restaurant, and that restaurant likes my stuff and starts following me. And you might think to yourself, that's counterintuitive, right? They're sort of supporting a post I did at another restaurant. What happens is I see them when they like and comment and follow, and then what happens is I might consider them, right? Because if they do that, I want to know who they are sometimes. And then what happens is you're building connections with micro influencers, because people who post about restaurants might post about other restaurants, in which case you get them to focus on you, and all of a sudden you're building your community. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's discovery, and that's an important component of this, is the method of discovery. If I'm talking about this thing, restaurants or tacos, for example, which I do talk a lot about tacos and get a lot of information about tacos, which has been led to like really cool, some really cool taco influencer things, which is just a ridiculous thing. But nobody's paying me to talk about tacos, right? But there's this method of discovery that happens, and it's really cool. But let's talk about, what does a micro influencer look like from a follower standpoint. Now, this is a excuse me. This is a poll that was done in 2016, a survey that was done in 2016 by Markerly, that was focused on Instagram, and it turns out that there really is a critical mass. Once a person on Instagram reaches a certain amount of followers, then engagement actually begins to decrease. And so this was a survey that was 2 million social media influencers, and these particular results, we're looking at unpaid posts. So people who had under 1,000 followers had an engagement rate of 8%. While those with 1,000 to 10,000 followers, that's cut in half. And then you can see it decreases in increments as the number of followers go up. So this is a really important information for us to know, that just because somebody doesn't have 10,000 or 100,000 followers doesn't mean that there's not value here. And so when I'm talking about micro influencers, I'm really talking about, they could have 1,000 followers, they could have 500 followers, but it really is, what is the impact that they have on their community? How much are they engaging with their community? And you'll see, in my opinion here, there's a sweet spot, and the sweet spot is anywhere from from 1,000 followers up to about 10,000 followers. You still got a good engagement rate. Even up to 100,000 followers, you still got a decent engagement rate. That may look low to you, but from the standpoint of general engagement on organic posts, remember, these are not paid posts, this is a really good standard to look at. I don't want you to think like I need to have somebody who's got 50,000 followers. I'd rather have somebody with 1,000 followers who's highly engaged and has a vested interest in their community. Now, this particular study applies to Instagram, but based on other data that I've seen, there is a lot of similarity between other social media platforms. Now, Facebook is limited in the data that we can pull there because of the privacy settings, but there's really a lot of similarity, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, or Pinterest. I see somebody asked a question about Pinterest. So just remember that it's not so important to concern yourself so much with the number of followers here. I will tell you that working with a micro influencer versus working with somebody who has 5 million followers is going to be more work, but the payoff can be much greater. And I can tell you that there was an example of a store a couple of years ago. I want to say it was in Nordstrom. They identified 150 or so micro influencers, and they sent them all a dress, and they had them wear the dress, take a picture, and all post it on the same day. And it was something within like 24 hours, that dress was completely sold out. And so that they didn't even pay those influencers; they just sent them the dress. But they did their research on finding those influencers that had these authentic relationships, and they're not always focused on fashion or focused on whatever your thing is. A lot of people, they're doing this as secondary to their full-time profession. So when they're doing this, it feels much more authentic. It is much more authentic than somebody who is a social celebrity. So social celebrity is making their living off getting paid or services and products in exchange for sharing it out on social. So this is just a little bit different than somebody who's doing it full time. I want you to look for the people who have the natural followers. So when it comes to trust, I thought this was really fascinating to me. This survey that was done by Nielsen Global Trust in advertising. 92% of consumers around the world say they trust earned media. That is huge. And so what that means is when we are following somebody on a social platform, whether it's YouTube or Facebook, we have a tendency to trust them 92% of the time more than any other form of advertising. So we already know that we're listening to our friends and our peers and our colleagues and our coworkers more than we're listening to a brand, right? We trust them more than we trust a brand, because of course a brand is going to tell us that they're awesome. But how many of you, when you're looking for a new dentist or you're looking for a dog trainer or whatever it is that you're looking for, you go to social media and you ask the people around you. You ask the people that you're connected to. We are looking for that word of mouth already. And so I thought that this was a really fascinating statistic, and that there's been such an increase. What do you think about this, John?
Well, I think that it's more powerful when other people talk about you than when you talk about you. And it's the way we make our buying decisions today. In the old days, we went to somebody's website and read their marketing materials, and then we talked to their salespeople. And today, we're ignoring that. And it's an example I teach when I talk about the customer journey. And when I bought a new Sony TV recently, and I didn't go to the website, I went to online sources. I talked to friends, and once I had my buying set, then I sort of went and physically looked at the TVs. But influence by others is the key buying decision today. And I think that one of the things you mentioned earlier about the large people versus the small people, do you know how much time it takes to get a large influencer beginning to get engaged with you, even if you can? And imagine if you were able to get 100 micro influencers as opposed to one big influencer. Not only will they potentially have more engagement, but I think that it's going to be more relevant and authentic, because if 100 people are talking about you and maybe, let's say, making videos about putting your makeup on, that could actually build a brand. In fact, it's how one of my friends sold his company for $300 million by building a cosmetic company, by basically building micro influencers of young women putting the makeup on.
Yeah, I love that story. That's NYX Cosmetics, which I am a fan and a user of NYX Cosmetics. But it really is like just going out and running these really creative video contests, and empowering people to share your products and services that they're already in love with, right? And we'll talk about that when we get into how we're identifying influencers. I thought this was really interesting too, that consumer reviews are the second most trusted source of brand information. And if we think about this, reviews, yeah, you can have reviews on your Facebook page, or you can go, I use Yelp. I don't know how many people still use Yelp, but I use Yelp very heavily, especially when I'm looking for restaurants. And I use TripAdvisor. And TripAdvisor is a fantastic place to go to review, hotels and restaurants and things to do. We have much more trust in that because other people, third-party people, are writing those things. It's the same way if someone is going onto a social network and talking about your product. That in itself is a type of review. It's not just the same thing. It's just not the same thing as going and reading a Yelp review. So these kinds of things are really important too. So the question is, how do we start to identify, how do we find who these micro-influencers are? So number one, start with your current customers. Who are the people out there who are already raving fans? If you've got a product and service, you probably have people talking about you on social. And if you're not sure if you have people talking about you on social, that's something that you need to address. If you're not out there having conversations with them, or you're using some type of social listening mechanisms to identify people who are talking about you, whether they're saying good things or bad things, that's really important. But think about who you're having interactions with, whether it's on social or it's on phone calls or through emails. Who are your existing customers that are already raving fans of who you are and what you do? That is an excellent place to start to identify these customers. Now, because I work in the industry, I run a lot of tests, right? So if you follow me on Twitter or on Instagram or on Facebook even, I'm constantly testing brands of all different sizes, because I will talk about their product or their service and I will tag them on one of the social networks. And these are all, I will say in there too, this is not an ad. I really love this product, and I only do it for good things. I don't complain. I don't take to the social airways to vent dirty laundry unless I can't get resolution anywhere else. But I pay attention then to who is responding to me. So who is at least liking the picture or the post, or who is actually interacting and engaging. I do that from my side because this is what I do in the industry, and I'm always looking for those brands that have this high rate of engagement, regardless of the size of the brand. The next thing is there are databases out there. There are services out there that connect you with potential influencers. And here's a couple of examples for you. So getheartbeat.co excuse me, is a great place to go to identify influencers in very specific industries. So they really will help you build your audience. They help you target your customers. If you've got a new product or a new service to launch, they call them ambassadors, can be a really great way to do this. But that's one example of a database or a service that will help you. The next example is called Tiny Sponsor. Tiny Sponsor is based out of LA. A guy named Mike Prasad started this a couple of years ago, and you can see here, like, there's some examples right up top of, okay, they've got these featured creators, then they have packages, and I can tell you, it's not in this picture, but in each of these, it tells you what the cost is and how many followers they have. And you can see across the top, you can break this down by industry. So this is a great place to at least go start and do some research on on who these influencers are. Mark Casey wants to know, are they micro-influencers? So yes, in most cases, these are micro-influencers. There are other tools out there to use for macro-influencers. There's a great tool out there called Julius, which is an agency-sized tool that helps us identify macro-influencers. But for small businesses and for companies that want to leverage micro-influencers, these are a couple of great tools. There are others out there, but these are a couple to start with. Let's see, skipped one, there we go. So one other thing is you can create micro-influencers, right? One of the things that I get to do at GoDaddy is I get to go out and build relationships, and I'm identifying people who really care about the success of their communities. And they may not consider themselves influencers. And actually, those are the kinds of people who I like to work with, right? People who self-identify as an influencer, they're already having higher expectations, right, John? Where they're like, they already have this self-inflated ego.
Yeah.
I want to work with people who care about their community, not care about being an influencer.
And in fact, I think that people don't really understand who could be a real influencer to your prospect. And I'll just give you an example. If I was selling services to a small business, the most trusted advisor is their accountant or their technology advisor. And these are micro-influencers. And they would love to have a relationship with somebody who can help them serve their customers better. And so don't think about micro-influencers as just people who have big social media accounts who basically just talk a lot. It could be something you're not thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I say that look for people that this is their secondary thing, right? They're posting, maybe you've got, we'll just say athletic wear because that's what popped into my head, but you've got a person who works for a company, like he's got a job, right? But he also is a triathlete or he's a CrossFitter or whatever, and he posts a lot of content around that, and he's got a lot of followers that engage with him based on some of this stuff. Well, just because he's got a day job as an accountant doesn't mean that he's not a micro-influencer in this athletic space. So it's not just this straight, like this person does this, and so I'm only going to build a relationship with him based on what his job is. It's really what they're doing in social. And so a lot of times micro-influencers this is what they do as a hobby, whatever this activity is. So it is possible to create micro-influencers. And I will tell you, I will give you the 5 things that, the 5 categories that I look at from GoDaddy's perspective. We created this. We have this special team of 5 people at GoDaddy, and this is what we focus on is micro-influencers, advocacy, and events. And we ordered these, we put these in a very specific order. So the things that I look at, number 1 is relevancy. So how relevant is that person plus their audience to our vision and our mission and what we're trying to accomplish at GoDaddy? What is their motivation? Is their motivation simply to grow their social media following? Is their motivation to get paid the highest dollar amount by a particular brand? Or is it that they really do like your products and services and they're driven by that? They have enough belief and trust in your products and services that they want to share it with their community. What is their level of influence, or their potential for impact is what I like to call it. What is their accessibility? So that's one of the things that I do is I check test their accessibility by maybe sending them a direct message from my own account, from my personal accounts. One of the great things about my role at GoDaddy is that I have a personal brand myself, and I get to use that. I don't come in with guns blazing using the GoDaddy brand because a lot of people just want to work with the GoDaddy brand. And then I look at what is their type of influence. So do I think that this is going to drive revenue? Do I think this is going to increase the visibility of a particular product and service at GoDaddy? or is it something that can just generate more visibility for the brand? So those are the 5 things that I look at from a micro-influencer standpoint at GoDaddy. So let's talk about really quickly how we actually maintain and build micro-influencers. And the number one most important thing is that we have to be nurturing relationships. This is where Nimble comes in handy for us. We do use Nimble. I was a Nimble customer before I came to GoDaddy, but you have to remember that we're human beings doing business with human beings. And if you're not putting people first, you're doing something wrong. And really focusing on that human connection is going to provide you much more success and create those authentic and transparent relationships that we really want. We want that trust on social platforms and in the real world. So nurturing those relationships, really, really important. That follow up and that follow through are things that I see that people really lack, and they forget to do that. This is not a one-time thing. I really am building and nurturing long-term relationships with people, so much so that if I choose to leave GoDaddy at any point, I will maintain those relationships. My relationships are not transactional relationships.
I want to just jump in here.
Yeah.
I think that what you just said needs to be emphasized, in that follow-up and follow-through is critical to your success in any level that we're talking about, influencers or just basic people to people. And I think that it's the basics that wins games, and that's where we all sort of fall over, is the basics. And follow-up and follow-through is the biggest cause of failure of losing an opportunity and or a relationship. And if you think about the person on the promenade with the pencils in their hands and the plates spinning on the pencils, you got to give those plates a nudge every once in a while. And relationships are like a garden, so you got to get out there and tend them on a regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And that is the number one biggest mistake that I see brands of all sizes make, is that they treat everything as a transaction and not as a relationship. Creating relevance is important. Let me go back. There we go. Creating relevance is extremely important. So this goes to who is your influencer and who is that influencer's target market, right? And how does it tie back to what you are doing? And the best example that I can give you here is, let's use, there's a lot of people who are doing makeup videos, makeup application videos, and they have huge followings. Now, I take a look at, are they just, from the GoDaddy perspective, are they just creating makeup videos and images and all this kind of stuff to teach people how to put on their own makeup? Or are they creating this plus creating content to help other makeup artists grow a business, or to get started online, or any of those kinds of things? Now, the first one probably is not going to be so relevant to what I'm working on at GoDaddy, because they're teaching people how to put on makeup. That doesn't hold a lot of interest for what I'm working on at GoDaddy. But if they're helping people understand how they can become a makeup artist, how they might create a website, how they might use social media, all of those kinds of things, that's much more relevant. You also want to make sure that you are providing value to the influencer. This is a two-way relationship. This is not just, hey, I'm going to pay them money, or I'm going to give them a product or service for free and expect that they're going to share it. You also want to remember, like, help them out by sharing their other social posts. This is something that my team does. We make sure that we continue growing our relationship and having interactions with the people that we've identified as influencers, the people that we're working with. So we're having conversations with them on social. We travel a lot. We get to go to a lot of events. So before I go to an event, I check and see who's going to be there. I take people out for drinks, or I sit and I have a conversation with them, or I might take them some GoDaddy swag, or I might ask them how I can help them in their business. I'm providing just as much value to them as they are to me. Remember, it's a two-way street. This one is super, super important. Set guidelines. And this is mistakes that I've made in the past of not having guidelines, just having somebody where I say, okay, I'm going to send you to an event and you're going to take pictures for us or whatever the case may be, but not having true guidelines in place and setting those expectations of what you are going to do for the influencer and what the influencer is going to do for you. Creating those expectations right at the very beginning is really important. You can iterate on those can change, but there needs to be a discussion about that at the beginning. And this is a piece that I find people do all the time, is they get tunnel vision. They focus on doing micro influencer marketing or influencer marketing only, or they let their other stuff fall away. Understand that micro-influencer marketing should be one sliver of one slice of your overall marketing pie. And if you've really defined your objectives and you've built out your strategy and then you're identifying your tactics, you can start to really piece together what's going to work and what's not going to work. And micro-influencers, I believe that for most products and services, there is an opportunity for success here. So, John, I'm going to throw it to you to wrap it up.
Bring it on. First off, I just want to say, Heather, that was amazing. I love listening to you talk about your philosophy on building influencers, and especially micro-influencers, because I think that everybody does think that they have to go get a Brian Solis or Kim Kardashian or David Cameron Scott to talk about their product. Let me just go ahead and can you pass me over the controller for a second? Yeah. I want to share with our audience a little bit of my philosophy about how we use micro-influencers at Nimble and how I've used them in the past as well. So I think everybody can see my screen, right? Yep. Okay. So imagine me at 29 years old having invented CRM before Outlook or Salesforce existed. And I'm 29, I'm in an apartment in Canoga Park, which is a suburb of Los Angeles. How do I bring that to market? And I tried in the beginning to go and knock on doors and sell it to people or sell it to a local reseller store. And I had some basic success, but there's only 10 or 12 or 15 hours in the day that you could be knocking on doors, and ultimately that doesn't scale. And so what I figured out is, how do I find the influencer of my core prospect in and around the areas of promise of my product? What I did is I figured out that Novell resellers sold the network to that small business, and if I can get them to use it, then they'd recommend it and resell it, because people sell what they know and they know what they use. And I started cold calling Novell resellers around the country, and I started signing them up. I taught them how to be better, smarter, faster with Goldmine. They started recommending to their customer base. Each of them had 1,000 to 5,000 customers, and that's how we launched Goldmine without a dime of venture capital or any bank loans. Now, fast forward, I sold Goldmine when I was 40, and I began to swim in the social river, and I saw the immense power, how it's going to change the way we work, play, buy, and sell, and how was I going to not only build the Nimble brand, but also rebuild my brand, because nobody really knew who John Ferrara was after me being a dad for 10 years. I mean, people kind of forget you. And so I needed to go build a new brand, and that was the Nimble brand. How do I build a brand from scratch without spending a dime on marketing? So what I did is I identified the influencer of my core prospect in and around the areas of promise of my product, so thought leaders in sales and marketing and customer service, entrepreneurship, etc. And I began to find them by listening to the social river and finding people talking about pound marketing, pound sales, pound service, pound social. And then what happened is, as I identified these people, I began to share their content and engage with the people that responded. And that's where I basically saw that there was a needed tool that basically did that, helped you do that. But for those listening, if you want to find content to start sharing that is in and around the areas of promise your products and services, which is the easiest way to build a micro influencer community, use tools like BuzzSumo, and that'll tell you not only content, but also influencers as well. And then what happens is you start sharing their content, you hashtag it appropriately, you attribute their name, and then what happens is you're going to generate engagement, +1 likes, comments, retweets, and otherwise engagement. Then what you need to do is you need to reel that in and turn those connections into conversations and relationships into revenue. And here's an example, Karen Cooks. Karen has been a dear friend of Nimble since our earliest days, and not only does she tell other people about Nimble, but she actually recommended her relative to work at Nimble, who happens to be one of our newest customer success team members at Nimble. And this is how you build a brand. This is how you bring a product to market, is you've got to build relationships with a tribe and get that tribe to be your apostles and start telling your story. And so don't think about doing influencer marketing by basically paying people to talk about you, because people will smell that. They'll feel it. They'll know it. I'll give you one last example of this. So people that are influential in social media are great influencers for Nimble. And so I'm able to find people influential in these things, like people who attend Social Media Marketing World. And you can find Twitter lists on literally anything. And what you want to find is people that are influential with your core prospects. And here's an example in Social Media Marketing World. So if I wanted to reach out to these people, I could just send an email to all 4,000 people, but ultimately that's not going to be effective. What I want to do is I want to filter out these people based on their areas of influence or interest. And what I can do with Nimble is find people that are influential in social media marketing. And now I've got a small subset of these people, and I can sort it on the last contacted date, which is a relevance to us actually having engaged with them. And then what I could do is I can go ahead and build a set and send a group message. And by doing that, I could then begin to engage with these people, whether I'm actually going to go there or I want to attend virtually. And what we did is we rented a outdoor cabana at Social Media Marketing World at Ballast Point Brewery for $200, and we invited them. We had about 25 people attend, and we simply bought them beer, fed them food, and had conversations. And that's what you need to do. You need to take these digital connections into human face-to-face conversations, and that's how you can turn connections into conversations, relationships into revenue, and build a tribe of micro influencers. What do you think, Heather?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there are lots of ways to get super creative with this. Because we have so many small business owners here, what I want to leave you with is to really start thinking of things other than just monetary compensation. I will tell you that a handwritten thank you note or a handwritten note, period, will go very far in building a relationship and showing your appreciation for somebody. And a lot of these micro influencers are also small business owners, or they're doing the thing that they love as a hobby, and they're not out to get paid or to provide for their family based on money that they're getting paid in from an influencer standpoint. So I really want you to be creative, and I want you to understand that this is fully possible for businesses of any size. I work with businesses that have all sizes of revenue, and I can tell you that I have seen really powerful things happen just by creating true, powerful, meaningful relationships with human beings.
So that gets us to the offer section. But before we get there, I want to see if there's any last minute questions that anybody in our audience has, or any questions that particularly stood out. There was one by Mark about, I think, Pinterest, right? He was talking about asking a question about how do you find influencers, or does this apply to Pinterest?
Yeah, and I do. So I was doing a little research over here on the side too, and so far I haven't been able to find data on micro influencers or influencers related to Pinterest. But Mark, I'm going to continue to look, and I see that you followed me on Instagram, Mark, and I want to continue to look and see if I can provide actual true data to back it up. But I will say, based on my experience and other data that I've seen, I do believe that, yes, it's very similar on Pinterest. I don't think that you need to worry about focusing on people who have hundreds of thousands of followers, but really the engagement and the interaction and the care for their own community is what you should be looking for.
And when we talk about influence, don't just think about influence with prospects and customers, because ultimately influencers can influence other influencers as well as your partners that you do business with. And I want to share an example of that. So we are doing business with Microsoft. Microsoft has signed a reseller agreement with Nimble where Microsoft is reselling Nimble globally with Office 365, which we're thrilled about. But that didn't happen by itself. It happened by building relationships, first off, integrations with Office 365 and the products, but then relationships across the Microsoft business team spectrum. And these relationships aren't LinkedIn connections, because ultimately a LinkedIn connection is like walking in my lobby. It's not going to really connect you for life. And I think that connections for life happen across the softer areas, which I call the 5 F's of life: family, friend, food, fun, and fellowship. And there is a person who is the chief of staff for the head of Microsoft's entire global business teams. And he was so busy in what he was doing, he couldn't answer my emails. And the only way I actually got connection with him to stay top of mind, I started connecting with him on Instagram, where we both share a passion for photography, mountains, and our dogs. And through that connection, we stayed top of mind. I commented on that stream that I was going to be in Seattle the next week, and we reconnected and had the conversation that resulted in furthering helping each other grow. And that's an example of micro influence that's done not with prospects and customers, but with partners as well.
Yeah, I love it. There are so many other things to do. I want us all to remember, let's just have a little extra humanity in everything that we're doing every day.
Cool. So I'd love for Heather, do you have any last call to actions that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, so it should be up on your screen, hopefully. So
Yep.
For the next 30 days, if you have a question or if there's something that I can help you with, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. Let me know that you're a part of this webinar, and you can ask me anything. And when I say anything, I mean anything. I am an open book.
Awesome. That's really kind of you to open yourself up for conversation with the audience to help them access your expertise. And what we're doing for our audience today is anyone who signs up for Nimble, they can contact the care team and we'll give you 100 prospector credits. Now, if you haven't heard about Nimble Prospector, it is an amazing tool that helps you to build records on people and companies in literally seconds. But not only that, but will automatically give you their contact info. And I'm just going to preview that to you right here. So let's say I wanted to get a hold of Jeffrey. Now, what Nimble does is I turn this on and Nimble will automatically build a record, which you may be familiar with, that we do that, mapping their identity and bringing the data down. But we'll also, if you give Nimble the first name, last name, company, domain name, we'll give you all their contact info as well. Now, this doesn't give you permission to cold call them or send them horrible emails asking them to buy your products and services. But what it does do is help you to reach out. And an example of which is there was a analyst talking about how CRM is about relationship management recently, and somebody who I didn't know said, you know what, CRM isn't about relationships, it's about command and control. And he said, when are sales managers going to loosen the grip? And mention myself and Nimble, saying that that's what we're sort of teaching and building. So what I did is I Nimbled him, and Nimble essentially gave me his, not only gave me his record and told me he was head of data and CRM at Disney, but it gave me his contact info. So I commented at him here and thanked him. Then I emailed him to connect for a further conversation. That email led to a LinkedIn conversation, which ultimately led to a face-to-face a breakfast, resulting in a relationship not only between ourselves, but also things that we're doing together at Disney. And so Prospector helps you to prospect smarter everywhere you're working, and we have that offer for you. So please do take advantage of that. And with that, Heather, I'd like to thank you for joining us for this conversation today about using micro-influencers to grow in 2018. Heather, thank you so much.
It was absolutely my pleasure to be here, and I hope that I provided value to everybody who's listening. Have a great day, you guys.
Thank you.